Hello to all of our lovely listeners and welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, Karim, Jules and I sit down and have a chat to Kiran. Karim, Jules and I are from Halad to Health, which is a not-for-profit organisation, now an official charity started by a few university students from Melbourne. We've been around for about a year now, and we're all focused on health promotion and providing health education to students in the rural Philippines. We do most of our fundraising through GAMSAT tutoring services, as well as biomed revision sessions and whatnot. And we've set up quite a solid GAMSAT tutoring company this year, which is doing quite well. Karim and I are tutors for that, and Jules is a part of the event management team at Halad as well. And today we are lucky enough to be joined by Kiran. Kiran, did you just want to start us off with a bit of an intro about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Kiran. I'm a third year medical student at Monash Uni, and I'm just doing the undergraduate program.
Lovely, thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your medical journey so far? What inspired you to want to pursue being a doctor and how you got in?
Yeah, so I obviously got into the undergraduate pathway. So I was probably a little naive choosing to go down this path in high school. And I won't lie, I actually didn't know a lot about the career or what it really entails. I really learnt that after signing up for it. And I guess I signed up for it for probably a lot of the cliche reasons. Like I liked that it was a service industry and you get to help people and interact with them, as well as like the intellectual aspect, like you're figuring something out, you're trying to get to the diagnosis with all these clues you get. That really appealed to me as well. But yeah, in terms of how I got in, I was in high school and I just got a good ATAR at that time and was able to wing the UMAT, which is an interesting test you have to do, but it's now called the UCAT, and got an interview at Monash.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like really crazy that, you just did it straight out of high school. Like, I'm honestly amazed because when I finished high school, I just had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. So I'm just so impressed by your discipline so early on. And I guess kind of going off what you were saying about like how you felt like you were a bit maybe naive going in, do you feel like it kind of like your experience in med school was a bit different to what you expected going in?
I feel like it was definitely different to what I expected. I probably didn't have enough expectations or do enough research about the course or about what it would be like. Um, I think I just assumed it would be similar to high school and you would just be learning stuff, but it ended up being quite different.
Yeah. In what ways was it different to what you expected?
I guess like the first thing for me, because I went straight from high school, I didn't have an undergraduate degree, and I think I'd never done a university course before, obviously, but the content is super memorization heavy. I think at high school, a lot of the VCE subjects that are marked higher or that high achieving students tend to do are quite like application based or you learn a skill. There isn't like heavy content. So going into uni, it was just so much memorization content. And the amount of content you learn is just so much more than in high school, which is the same across most degrees. I believe it was just the double whammy of doing medicine and a uni degree. Um, but yeah, I definitely didn't realize how much is just rote learning, especially in year 1 and 2, because what really drew me to the course was like the problem solving aspect and figuring things out and thinking. But really, you have to do so much groundwork, just all this memorization before you can even get to that level. So that's something I would definitely warn myself.
Yeah, and I suppose it must have been really, really difficult doing that transition to, having to rote learn things. So what do you think were some of the things that really helped you make that transition?
I guess little disclaimer, I'm a terrible rote learner and honestly I'm still struggling with this today, 3 years into this degree. But a few things that have helped me is like simple time management and keeping up with the content. So if you do it little by little, for me, I found that better than having to cram in the few weeks before the exam. The other thing is working with others, like when you're quizzing each other or when you're studying with other people, it just makes it 10 times easier, especially when you're verbalizing what you've learned. It just really sinks in rather than just typing or writing. And re-explaining to your friends also helps. I know everyone uses Anki. Do you guys have at your uni as well the Anki code? I've never used it because I don't like typing in things and reading repetitively. I prefer like drawing diagrams or like other things like that tend to work for me because I'm not so good at just memorizing easily.
We actually have an episode on our podcast about study tips, and we all study very differently. Karim is an avid Ankier.
He's part of the cult for sure.
Yeah. And we're not so much, Jules and I. We do other things. But what advice would you provide for students entering Med next year? How can they get prepared for all the content? What study techniques do they need to know about, or resources do they need to know about before studying?
So if you're studying, I obviously did undergrad, which I feel like is a little bit more relaxed because you have that one foundation year over 2 years. So I would really advise people going into year 1 and 2 at Monash to relax a little bit and actually have a lot of fun, because you actually do have like a lot of time off because it's only 2 12-week semesters, and you have big holidays. And I think it's good that they've structured that way, because if you've come out of high school and you just studied a lot in year 12, it's good to kind of calm down a little bit. In terms of like prep in the summer before med school starts, I don't think any is necessary because they don't even tell you what you're going to learn. Everything is very last minute. If you go to uni, you won't even know what you're doing or get your timetable until like a week before. But some people have to do the biology bridging course. I had to do that as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the opposite of study advice if you're doing undergrad. But I would definitely recommend getting onto past year's resources. They were a lifesaver. So going to, at Monash, they're called PSPs, where the older year level teaches you content. If you can get onto those Google Drives or notes and question banks, that will be the lifesaver for you getting through year 1 and 2, content made by the older year levels.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. We have sort of similar things at Melbourne, so I'm pretty sure it's like across most unis there is that. I think that's one of the really great things about studying med is there's such a culture of like older students helping sort of younger students. Like we have peer tutoring and we also have like lots of notes circulating around, which has been really great. I guess sort of going off that, like how would you say during, you know, your first 2 years, I think this year's a bit hard to judge because it's obviously all been a little bit disrupted by COVID, but before that, like what was sort of a typical day like for you in med?
Yeah, so the way like Monash undergrad is structured is the first 2 years are pre-clinical years at uni, and you learn all your foundation sciences and anatomy, and then the next 3 years are in placement. So in terms of your pre-clinical years, the typical day is probably quite similar to any other uni student who's doing science or biomed or engineering. You'd come into uni on campus. We'd have lectures. We'd have around 6 hours of lectures a week. And you just sit and listen to those. And then we'd have 2 lots of anatomy a week where you're in the labs and you get to do dissections with cadavers. Then we'd have odd labs here and there, like we had some microbiology labs or a physiology labs, and you get to put wires on people or go on exercise bikes and things like that, as well as your clinical skills tutorials, which would be learning how to do actual clinical skills like examine a shoulder joint or take a good history from a patient. And I guess the last category of class you would have in your preclinical years is like I forgot the name, that's so sad. I think it was called PBL, problem-based learning, or maybe it was called ICL. I think they changed the name. in our year level, but basically that one kind of puts together what you've learnt that week, because it's on Friday in a problem-based setting, and it's meant to be like a real life setting, like it's meant to be based on a patient. So the patient comes in and they have a headache, and then you would kind of consolidate everything you've been learning about the head that week, if it was the head week. So yeah, I feel like in terms of contact hours at Monash, it would be like 16 to 20 hours a week, which is okay. I feel like it gives you time to have a part-time job or to go to all the uni events and things that are on.
Well, sort of tying into that, because it sounds like it's, you know, quite busy in undergrad. It sounds like you're learning quite a bit, and there's a bit of a transition from high school to uni. How did you feel you handled the workload? Did you feel that it was manageable? How'd you go?
I would say it's definitely a shock. I don't want to like underplay it. It was definitely a massive step up from year 12. You'll be learning in 1 week, like 4 to 6 weeks worth of a VCE subject worth of content. But I do think you get used to it quite quickly. I don't know if you guys found that, because everything is moving at the same pace, and then your study skills just increase a lot and you're able to take it in a lot. I found you also have like a lot more freedom than in high school. So you have a lot more time in your day. Your day isn't as structured. We used to have massive breaks. So it was good because I lived quite far from Clayton. I was stuck on campus in those massive breaks. So for me, that helped me to be forced to study because I was just stuck on campus. I'm going to study. So you use your days well. Yeah, I think the main thing is being disciplined while you're at uni and in your study breaks. So you actually study and then you can go home and do whatever you want. I found by year 2, I'd kind of gotten used to it. So I had like 3 different part-time jobs I was doing, and I found it easy to like fit other stuff in and still enjoy my life to the level I wanted to live it and do all the other stuff I wanted to do.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you get used to things eventually, but it is a big jump from high school to uni. As you said, whatever it is that you're studying, it's very different to being taught in the traditional classroom environment that you see in high school. And going on from that, what advice would you give any students in high school, or maybe doing their undergrad, wanting to pursue a potential career in medicine? And how do they know whether or not it's the right path for them?
Yeah, this is a really hard one because I definitely did not take good advice in high school, and I kind of just winged everything. I guess my key piece of advice would be to get real life stories from real people about what it's actually like. Monash websites are all fake and anything. Not that it's fake, but it's not personalized to you. And if you can actually talk to someone face to face or on email or in comments, and they can respond to your personal questions, that's just so much better. So I would recommend going to the Monash Open Day, finding an actual med student in the med building, because that's where they are, and asking them, because they come there on that day to answer questions, ask them all the questions you have. That's what I did when I was in year 12, because then they can actually cater their question to you, and try and ask a bunch of different people. There's also heaps of vlogs on the internet from Monash. I used to watch them when I was in high school, and it actually shows kind of what the classrooms look like and what they're actually doing, so you can kind of understand it a bit more. And if you know anyone in your family or your friends who are doctors, it's really good to actually hear what they think the career is like, because once again, the career is like yet again quite different to the actual course.
What do you think was sort of the most challenging thing for you about med school, or about, you know, your studies so far?
I feel like definitely motivation and like self-regulation, because in medical school everything is self-taught. All your classes, you have to come basically knowing the content already, and the classes kind of build off that or ask questions of the content, or you have to look at specimens and you have to already know what artery or what muscle you're looking at. So you need like a lot of self-discipline if you want to get the most out of the classes. I definitely rocked up to quite a few classes not having done any pre-work, and then you kind of just waste your time. You're like, why am I here? I don't even understand anything that's going on. So I definitely found that the most challenging. because it's a completely different structure to high school where you kind of learn it and then do homework after. This is more like learn it at home and then come and apply it and extend your knowledge.
Yeah, it is really that active learning, which will hopefully mean that the learnings do stay in your brain a little longer than passive learning. But in saying that, you've sort of spoken about the struggles of adapting to the study and workload, but what was it like, and what is it still like for you emotionally, and socially, and everything else apart from the study with med school?
Yeah. Definitely socially, it's really good. I know you guys will probably have the same thing. The cohort is kind of really small, so you get to know everyone. At Monash, even more, you have group A and group B for all your classes. So it's kind of the cohort is divided in half, so there's even less people. Medicine also has heaps of social events. I feel like they've some of the most out of any of the other faculties. So there's heaps of stuff to go to. I feel like I was never bored because there was always something happening. Yeah, and despite the workload, I still feel like there's a lot of time to go out and meet friends. I feel like that's one of the best things about medicine. You meet a lot of like-minded people and you form really close, strong friendships that I feel like will last the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. We agree because we're friends too.
No, I can sense the chemistry you guys have. It's incredible.
Hopefully for a long time.
But yeah, I mean, like listening to everything that you were saying in terms of, you know, like emotionally, socially, how did you find sort of trying to balance a YouTube channel alongside study, alongside part-time work? You know, was it challenging? Was it weird trying to start a YouTube channel as well and trying to convey your experience about medicine?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the YouTube channel. Me and my friend started a YouTube channel in year one. It is not serious. We don't post often. We are terrible at doing that. But I guess our main goal was just to show people what it's really like. And I just don't feel like there's enough information out there for people who don't have siblings or parents who went through medical school about what it's really like. So it's good to see a real life perspective that isn't an intense study vlog, because half the vlogs out there are just people who study like 14 hours a day, and most med students don't do that. But since we posted really irregularly, that was kind of easy to keep up. But we do get a lot of emails to the channel, and those are always good to respond to. In terms of like balancing part-time work, it is like a struggle. I personally like eased myself into it. In year one, I didn't work that much. I just tutored a few students and just kept it really easily. Because you do get 1 day off per week in year 1 and 2 at Monash. But by year two, I'd kind of learned how much work was required and kind of let myself do only the minimum amount of work required to do reasonably comfortably past medicine, because I didn't personally want medicine to take over my life or aiming for that A+ bracket. So I really set myself like a personal limit, like this is how much I'm going to study, and this rest of the time is for working and socializing. I worked at a restaurant and I found that was really good to socialize with other people and actually helped me study better in the times that I did allocate for study, since I was seeing other people who are outside of medicine. I just think it's really important to have that balance and kind of segment your life so that it doesn't become unevenly weighing on one side.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And it can definitely take some time to figure that out. There's no perfect formula, I don't think. It's different for everyone. And every uni as well has different requirements and what they expect from you. And that was definitely different this year, I think, for most universities around the world, and in Australia and in Victoria here. Transitioning to an online sort of platform, which may be the case for students starting med next year as well. So do you have any specific advice for them around that? And how did you find learning online?
I found learning online quite difficult this year. I've started my third year this year, which was our first year on placement. So we had about 6 weeks, of full-time placement before we got taken off for almost the entire year. So a year that was supposed to be really practical, hands-on, learning through experience and just seeing people talk about the drugs all the time. That's how I would learn the drugs, or seeing people with the actual symptoms and signs in front of me. That's how I would learn them. Instead became look in pictures on your laptop and read through textbooks and read through websites, which for me was just like the hardest way to learn. I really struggle with book learning as opposed to hands-on learning or actually talking to real people. So for me, I really struggle with that. I probably don't have the best advice of how to overcome that. But what really helped me, halfway through the year, a friend and I started studying together online and started pretending to be patients for each other. And that really helped just to like consolidate all the conditions, because learning from a book was just the worst thing ever. But you can fake your own patient interactions if you're stuck doing one of your clinical years online with friends. Year 1 and 2 online would kind of be similar to what it was actually like, except you would miss all your labs and everything, which would kind of be really difficult to learn all the anatomy. Especially if you're starting uni, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to make friends, because studying with friends is one of the best ways to study. I'm not sure how you guys met everyone. That's so impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually had I was going to say, we actually had a podcast about making friends in med school, just because we're a little bit worried for the students starting next year who might be starting online. And so we sort of talked about how, we encourage students to go to everything, go to Zoom events, that sort of thing. Even though it does seem a little bit weird socializing online, you still do get some sort of benefit out of it. But yeah, I think it was definitely a different year than what we were all expecting, but you do adapt to it. And I think that's a part of being a med student, is that you sort of adapt to the circumstances that you're in. And it's definitely an attribute that's in most students that I know for sure.
And everyone's in the same boat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you mentioned that you sort of get a lot of questions to your YouTube channel. Do you mind sharing with us what some of those might be?
Yeah, so a lot of them we've kind of answered here because they're just the generic questions people always want to know. I think the main one we get is a little bit about workload hours, what it's actually like. Do you have time for part-time work? Another one is about making friends and the social aspects. We also get a lot of questions about just entering into medicine. A lot of people ask, are co-curricular activities important, or your resume and things like that? And for most unis, it's just based off UCAT, GAMSAT, then an ATAR or a GPA, and then an interview. So none of those things really are required for most unis. And a lot of questions about UCAT preparation courses or GAMSAT courses, and if we recommend them.
All the really burning questions that every student wants to know.
Yeah.
Halad is a great GAMSAT tutoring company, if anyone's wondering. If we don't say so ourselves. Okay, what do we have next? All right, so I think the biggest difference between our journey and your journey is obviously that you did it in undergrad rather than graduate medical pathway. Do you think there is any major sort of stigma associated with doing med school as an undergraduate compared to a graduate, or does that not really exist?
I guess I don't really think so, because I'm doing an undergraduate degree, and in our third year, the postgraduate students join our cohort, if that makes sense. And I feel like we're all kind of seen as equals now. I think soon I won't be able to tell who's postgraduate and undergraduate anymore. And I definitely think at an intern level, no one will know if you're postgraduate or undergraduate, and everyone gets along.
Yeah. everyone blends into one another. Everyone's just struggling through together.
Yeah.
Everyone is in the same chaotic, stormy boat, just rocking in the ocean.
Trying to make sure that you manage that hole at the bottom and not let too much water come in. But it isn't all doom and gloom. People listening, med school is good, so don't worry. If we're putting anyone off, we're all doing it and we're staying in it, so it must be okay.
I guess going on a bit of a like completely separate thing now, what would you say are some of your, I guess, aspirations or like career goals for the future? Like, do you know if you like want to work clinically or like what kind of a doctor you want to be, or whether you want to do more YouTube in the future, all that kind of stuff?
Definitely want to work clinically. Don't see the YouTube particularly being as fulfilling as working as a doctor, I think. Yeah, from what I've seen of the career, I've never actually worked as a doctor. It seems like an incredible job, just something like really amazing and unlike any other job, and definitely something that like suits me personally and what my interests are. With the lack of clinical experience I had this year, I honestly have no idea which specialty. I've narrowed it down to not surgery. Is probably too close-minded at this point, but not surgery. I'm remaining close-minded, but staying open-minded to any other more clinical specialty. Yeah.
Lovely. Yes, lots of people are either pro-surgery or no surgery. There's not much in between. Well, thank you for that. Are there any last-minute questions from Karim or Juls?
Nope, I think that's it. I think you said everything we wanted to ask.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today, Kieran. We will pop all of your information in the show notes below. But if the listeners did want to check out your YouTube channel, where can they find it?
So our channel is called At Your Cervix. And I think we just search At Your Cervix into YouTube, it will come up, or Monash Med Vlogs will probably come up. Watch our videos. They're silly, but fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kieran. I hope the listeners got something out of it today. I sure did, and really enjoyed having a chat to you. Thanks for being so honest and letting us all know what it's really like being a medical student at Monash on the undergrad pathway.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Nitro, these paper cocaine like whoa. Now I'm Doc Strange in the range like whoa. 100 miles an hour switching lanes like whoa. Plus I'm getting brain from this chick like whoa.